Hi there, welcome to Boxing Deep Dive. I'm Lyndon Hosking, and as always, great to have you along for another episode of Classic Fights. We had to have a week off last week. Everyone had a little bit on, but we're back with a vengeance, that is. I'd like to introduce my co-hosts for this episode. As always, Grant Tassie Brown and Mike Altamora. How are we, guys?
Good, thanks, Lyndon, mate. Just kicking ass and taking names and, getting on with the show, mate, because if you think of pro boxing in Tasmania, you think of me. Big shout out to Bill Hack in your Norfolk, the big fella in Tassie, and big things being announced soon, brother. As I said, mate, pro boxing in Tasmania, it's all about me, mate. What I do, what I say, and that is the bottom line because Tassie Brown says so.
Tassie is Tassie. Hey, can I ask you, I know it's a little bit off topic, Tassie, but when it comes to the Tasmania thing, can you put a good word in for the Aussie rules team down there, or you got a little bit of pull? Can you influence anyone down there?
I don't want an Aussie rules team there. I'll go for Collingwood still. I'm not changing my team.
Okay.
Fuck the football. AFL will get too much money. Fuck the football in Tasmania. Fuck them.
All right, let's move on. Mike Altamura, great to have you along, Mike, and it's obviously it's your choice. Before we get started, anything happening in the world that we need to know about that you're on your soapbox about tonight?
Yes, I mean, look, I'll keep it focused on the program. I think that
No
things are always a little bit more hectic when Taz is in the house, but I don't mind it. When it's just you and I, Lyndon, it's a little too quiet. It's like a nice friendly conversation over a couple crumpets and scones with some strawberries and cream. Whereas when Taz is in, there's everything on the smorgasbord. So look,
drive-by shootings and everything going on.
Yeah, precisely. I love these kind of shows because we have an opportunity to introduce the audience to maybe fights they either never appreciated the first time around or something that they're not even familiar ever happened in boxing history. So we get to kind of educate people a little bit, but also open their eyes to a different wave of fighters. So that's what I endeavored to do this week, because I know that this is one of those kind of closet classics that just flew under the radar even at the time. And I know a lot of people historically wouldn't go back and appreciate these two young fighters, especially the elder counterpart, but I think they definitely should.
Yeah, well, while you're on that, mate, it's your pick this week, and what fight are you talking about there?
We are talking about the WBO World Light Flyweight Championship. Defending champion Jorge Arce against veteran legendary champion Michael CARBAJAL. It's basically the old guard versus the new. So Jorge Arce, 21-year-old prospect, coming to the bout, 20 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw, but was considered really one of the rising stars of the Mexican boxing scene. So much so that this fight takes place in Tijuana, California, and this fight was a semi-main event to Eric Morales, the great Eric Morales, defending the world title against Renante Jamili. So essentially, it was looked to be a great showcase for Arce. CARBAJAL had been a multi-time world champion, 1988 Olympic silver medalist from memory, and it had been really, CARBAJAL was known as the first ever $1 million fighter in the lower weight classes. He was an absolute star. His first bout and then the ensuing continuation of fights with Humberto Chiquita Gonzalez are amongst the greatest fights of the 90s. And so this was kind of looked at as a passing of the torch. Even though Arce was 21, CARBAJAL was 30, but as we know, fighters don't always age chronologically, and CARBAJAL had been in a lot of tough bruising fights, coming to the fight 48-4. So, I mean, when you think of the lighter weight classes, 52 fights, physically taxing on the body, and a lot of people felt like this was the right showcase for Arce, whereas CARBAJAL, on his side of the fence, he had dropped the IBF world title to Mauricio Pastrana in 1997, had a bit of a layoff comeback, secured 4 cheap comeback wins, and this was his last hurrah. He always had a dream of going out and retiring as world champion, and this was his opportunity.
And all that without even looking at box rec. You continue to amaze me, mate. I know you're just, as we always say, encyclopedia of this sort of stuff. And I did see too, before I get to Tassie, he fought a little fella that I used to love watching as an amateur, was Scotty Olsen from Canada. And I think they had a
Yeah.
few tussles in the amateur ranks, but he fought him after the Pastrana fight in '97 and won by a 10th round knockout for the IBA World Light Flyweight title. But he was a little goer too, wasn't he, Scotty Olsen?
Yeah, I mean, Scotty Olsen, they were actually both aligned with Top Rank in the early 90s, like out of the Olympics, out of the 88 Olympics. And then, but early 90s is really when they developed into main event fighters. CARBAJAL a bit faster. He was fast-tracked to a world title. But Olsen, what was his name? The Canadian Bulldog, right?
Yeah, it was.
He was just a great all-action fighter. And it really was reflective of a terrific wave of fighters at that weight class that, like I said, I mean, CARBAJAL, Olsen, then you had the likes, you throw in Chiquita Gonzalez in the mix. You had Ricardo Alfinito Lopez, arguably not even arguably, definitely the greatest strawweight of all time. He was on the Don King side. CARBAJAL was on the Bob Arum side until later crossing over for a few fights with King. But, you know, like they were little giants of the ring, and there was a lot of great fights. I forgot to also mention that CARBAJAL won was the IBA world title, light flyweight world title against Scotty Olsen, and then dropped it in a really lackluster performance in which he just couldn't deal with the hand speed and movement of Baby Jake Malala. 4'9" Baby Jake from South Africa, a terrific champion in his own right. And a lot of people felt that CARBAJAL was spent goods coming out of that fight. So that's when he went into a short retirement, as a lot of fighters do, dissatisfied, felt that itch for one last world championship, and 4 fights later, 4 wins, he found himself in line for ARCE. But stylistically, these two, at any era of either of their careers, they're made for a terrific matchup.
Tassie, you know, we speak about the trilogy he had with Gonzalez back in the day, and obviously he won the first one and lost the next 2, I think, from memory. Mike, you can correct me on that. But we don't sort of think of this fight with Jorge Arce, but considering what Arce actually went to do after this, it's a pity they didn't sort of cross paths even, you know, 5 years later. It would have been a magnificent fight. This one was great, of course. But as I said, we normally associate with CARBAJAL with Gonzalez, but this is definitely one of those underrated fights. I'm going to get the fight going as we go there, boys. There it is.
Yeah. Is Peter Maniatis around at all?
He's not tonight, mate, no.
Because I've got a quiz question. What is Michael CARBAJAL's nickname? It's
Is it Maniatis Di Piedra?
Little Hands of Stone.
Yeah.
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 So, I actually talked to CARBAJAL on Instagram. I talked to him.
Is that right?
Yeah. I followed him a while ago, and he always replies. And yeah, man, I'm a massive fan. Here's my era. 88 Olympic silver medalist, like Mike said. The fights with you know, Chiquineta Gonzalez were amazing. The first one to come back from 2 knockdowns, and massive fan. I know this fight well because, as I said, it's this was a great fight. Arce was the young up-and-comer and done so much after this fight. But CARBAJAL, many thought from his last couple of performances that he might have been past his best, mate. But, yeah, mate, this one really proved to be a great fight. As I said, like Mike said, CARBAJAL brought the big paydays to the little guys, which was great to see. The first $1 million fighter for a small division fighter, and yeah, always loved Michael CARBAJAL and his brother Danny. Great team.
And Danny was, I think, about twice the size of Michael, I think, from memory, but
Yeah.
which is unusual. But Mike, tell us about the fight here. Obviously, we're into round 2 here. Arce, I think, was only 21. I think you said earlier it might only be 21. Sorry, go ahead.
And what's interesting is that Arce didn't just go on to have a little bit of a career post this fight. He had another 51 fights.
Yeah.
He retired 64-8-2, multiple weight world champion. So he went on to have a historic career. Obviously, 2 battles with Australia's Hussein. The first one was a Fight of the Year contender until was it Pacquiao and Morales stepped out 10 minutes later and had a battle that just kind of overwhelmed that in those states.
So, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, what I think's interesting here, and this kind of rejigged my memory, just the fact that, you know, El Travieso, as Arce was known, former member of the circus in Mexico, he was moving a lot more in this fight, more fluid on his toes, trying to set traps. And I think it's because his team had planned that, CARBAJAL never had the fastest feet, even in his absolute prime, and they felt like, even though you look at him technically, Arce's a little smaller, they felt that he could time CARBAJAL in between his shots and just use his niftier footwork. And he was landing, but you could see earlier in the fight that Arce was landing the combinations and the flashier, more eye-catching shots, but CARBAJAL had the more thudding punches, thudding right hand and a thudding left hook.
Yeah, it was an interesting one, wasn't it, Tassie? Because just watching the fight, Arce, he fought a really, really good fight. As Mike said, he was on his toes a lot more. He's using his jab. He had lots of movement both ways. But it was almost, it reminded me a little bit, not to the same extent, but like a Chavez, Meldrick Taylor instance where Taylor was winning the rounds, but Chavez was really doing some damage. This sort of reminded me a little bit to that to some extent, where Arce seemed to be winning most of the rounds, but like Mike said, he had the bigger punches, and you could see they were starting to take effect on Arce as the fight went on.
Yeah, that's a very good comparison, Lyndon, the Chavez-Taylor one, because, that's right. It looks like he's in full control, but, the harder shots were doing damage and taking his toll down the stretch of the fight. So, yeah, look, 100%, mate. CARBAJAL, was a very big puncher. As I said, I caught him little hands of stone, and he still had that experience. You can't beat experience, mate. I mean, so many fighters, they just know how to go to rounds, and they know the timing of the fight, and they know what to do at the right time, and you can't beat experience, mate. And that's what CARBAJAL had in this fight, was experience. All those world title bouts against top guys, in the divisions, and as I said, even though he looked like he might have been dictated to, he was still doing some damage.
Well, this was his 24th fight, I think, Arce, but a little bit, like he obviously changed his style a little bit going forward after this fight. Mike had become a little bit more aggressive, but I was really impressed how well he actually boxed in his fight, and whoever came up with his game plan, it was the exact correct game plan, because he really pretty much won every round, except I think there was a knockdown coming soon, I think, but apart from that, he pretty much won every round up till he was stopped.
Yeah, there's a knockdown coming in the sixth round.
Sixth round, wasn't it?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it just use his feet. Good jab, good fundamentals. It's the fight game. You're going to get hit at times, and there's times where Arce would hold his feet and trade and exchange a little bit, but for the most part, he kept CARBAJAL turning and kept him off balance. But then he would step in and throw some heavy shots to have CARBAJAL's respect as well. But I just look at the style that Arce's fighting takes a lot of energy. Don't get me wrong. It takes a lot of energy to keep stalking and be copping shots flush too. But Arce's style in this fight, to me, takes a lot of energy and a lot of focus. Just step, swivel the other way, keep making the guy miss. I just love the little things he was doing stylistically, and this is where I look at, because he had so many wars throughout his career, people just remember him as being a warhorse of the ring, but he was more than that. And I think Tassie said it before, like, you can't buy experience. There's a knockdown, CARBAJAL lured him into an exchange there, but that's the risk. And, there's especially throughout the history of Mexican boxers, why they're so revered as gladiators of the ring is because they could be winning every card, but the kids keep taking chances. It's ingrained in them not to get away from doing that, not to go the Oscar De La Hoya versus Felix Trinidad plan the last 4 rounds and just move or run. Like, it's not ingrained in these kids. They keep fighting to the final bell. And you could see here with Arce, he's playing with fire, but, he was controlling the fire and the flame pretty well throughout.
Yeah, well, Tassie, because about this stage, even though he'd had the knockdown, CARBAJAL, I thought he was just done and dusted. I mean, I was watching the replay thinking, geez, I know he wins, but I didn't realise that Arce had won it so clearly, because up there you can see CARBAJAL's eye was swelled. I think he had a cut as well, and he looked to be tiring, but he pulled it out. And just to go over your point too, Mike, with it's hard to believe, Tassie, that these guys, as far as being punchers go, Arce ended up with 49 knockouts in 64 wins, and CARBAJAL had 33 knockouts in 49 wins. It's an amazing knockout ratio for guys that size.
Oh, 100%. I mean, the little guys over the years have sort of been neglected, and like Mike mentioned, Ricardo Lopez, the greatest, probably the greatest little man of all time, and CARBAJAL, Gonzalez, Arce, so many great fighters. They weren't getting the paydays back in the day. I mean, you know, look what Victor Chinian done as well. Our own Victor Chinian, and I mean, you know, and Fennec, you know, they'll probably, you know, bantamweight, but small off flyweight, super flyweight, strawweight was always the bigger guys, mate. And these guys are the ones that brought the attention and the spotlight and the money to the lower divisions. And I mean, you know, the amount of action these guys, the punches they throw, the skill they've got, mate. I prefer to watch these guys any day over the big boys, mate. If you're a true boxing enthusiastic, but most people don't know shit about boxing.
Yeah, you can see here, Mike, looking at, what are we, I think we're in round 8 or 9 here, but I don't know, but I mean, CARBAJAL, he looks dusted here, doesn't he? And ARCE was just pretty much controlling the action, doing what he wants at round 8, and he really looked gone at this stage, didn't he?
CARBAJAL's punch output had really deteriorated. He'd have moments of danger where he'd just throw like a whipping heavy hook out of left field, but he was getting outthrown and outlanded 2-1, 3-1 in most of the exchanges, and you could see the fight starting to really wear out of him. But again, you know, these old war horses, like I said, he come back with the dream to leave the sport as a world champion, and this was a night that he was a man possessed. If he was going to lose, it wasn't going to be from anything on his side of the fence, you know, lack of effort or anything of that nature. He just kept coming and coming and coming. And, you know, ARCE, to me, like, this is one of the few fights that I've gone back and rewatched and realized that both athletes come out of it with an elevated status, and you rarely see that in boxing. It's extremely rare to see that throughout history. But you knew that ARCE, at the conclusion of this fight, you knew ARCE was going to go on to have an outstanding career. How outstanding, you never know. But you knew he had plenty more left in the tank, because, you know, he had comprehensively outboxed one of the best fighters of the generation at that weight. And as for CARBAJAL, everyone who, you know, might have said, and you hear it all the time, people saying that certain fighters are manufactured by a promoter, people feeling like his legacy was manufactured by Top Rank or Don King or whatever. Here he is taking on a young lion in his backyard for the World Championship. So it's not like he was handed any favours.
Yeah, well, that's right, exactly. And Taz, this was in Tijuana. It was Mexico, wasn't it? Yeah, Plaza de Torres in Tijuana, Mexico. And because CARBAJAL is obviously Mexican heritage as well, but you wouldn't have known it because they were all for ARCE, Tazzy. He was a pretty popular fighter, wasn't he?
Yeah, popular fighter, man. The Mexicans always go with the pure Mexican over a Mexican-American. I mean, CARBAJAL represented America. He's from Phoenix, Arizona.
Yeah.
That's why they never really took De La Hoya as much. They always will stick with the full Mexican. You know what I mean?
I'll tell you what, Mike, it's sort of given me a bit of an idea for some possible dream fights coming up, because CARBAJAL against someone like a Chocolatito Gonzalez would be pretty good, wouldn't it?
Ooh, now you're talking.
Oh, even if you go within the same era, I mean, CARBAJAL and Ricardo Lopez was discussed for years, but they could never just align with the weights or promotional politics or whatever it may have been. Just think that there's so many great fights. Even, you know, you look at the mix of fighters in those weight classes, really, from CARBAJAL onwards. We've been blessed with the amount of talent we've seen, whether they're known mainstream or not. Like you said, Chocolatito's known, you know, because of the exposure on HBO and then the Superfly series that they had. But even, you know, Naoya Inoue, who we know now as a bantamweight, but his legacy at 105, 108, 112 pounds was exceptional too. There's been Kazuto Ioka, another one, multi-weight world champion, Donny Nietes. There's been so many great fighters, but they all owe it to fighters like CARBAJAL for paving the way. And there we see it. Right hand leads to the conclusion. Out of left field, trailing 98-91 on all cards.
He was, yeah, good call there. I was just going to say, Mike, while you're talking about it there, do you think it was a little bit premature with the stoppage? Because when I watched it, I thought, I think maybe they could have let him go on. But obviously, ARCE and his team didn't protest at all. But what did you think?
I think instinctively, when you first look at it, you feel like the referee could have given him a standing 8 count because the rope saved him.
Yeah.
So that was your excuse to assess him. But I think how he was reacting 20, 30 seconds later, I don't think it would have made a difference. I think CARBAJAL had him pretty well finished from that right hand. He just didn't see that right hand coming. He stepped in to throw his own and just took it right on the point of the chin. And then, you know, CARBAJAL, obviously inspired, was ready to unload. So I don't think 10, 15 seconds would have made a difference to recover, Arce.
Yeah, like you said, it was 98, 91 on all three cards. So he definitely had the fight won if he had to stay on his feet. But that's boxing. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And, you know, you don't, what do they say? Yeah, you don't win it by being in front, you know, when the fight's not over, because anything can happen. But so on the CARBAJAL here, Tassie, this was actually his last fight, which was... It's a great way to go out, but Arce, I mean, going through his career there, I mean, it's just too much to go through. The amount that what'd you say, Mike? It was 51 fights, but if he had after this, it was pretty much just the start of his career.
It's crazy. When you think that he had already won a world championship, made one defense at that point.
Yeah.
And yet people really perceive CARBAJAL to be the start of his career at the elite level. He went on to be a multi-weight world champion. And the irony is that many years later, Arce would shock the son of the legend, Wilfredo Vasquez Jr., to win the WBO 122-pound world title with a lot of the same ring guile and veteran tricks that Michael CARBAJAL exacted on him. The other
2011
irony,
that was. I'm just looking at it now.
Yeah, and the other irony, look at the win. You know, another one close on all cards. Don't get me wrong, but late round 12, he got him out of there, you know, and it was just a matter of the veteran drowning the young upstart late in the fight when they were completely ridden off going into it.
Well, I'll tell you a little bit of a story about that too, Mike and Tassie. That fight there, that was on May the 7th, 2011. That was the Pacquiao-Mosley card, I think, from memory, Mike. Am I correct?
I'm sure it is, yeah.
I was actually at that fight, and a little bit of a story here, Tassie. I know you're good mates with CARBAJAL there. I was at Caesar's Palace having breakfast, and looked to the corner, to the table beside me, and there's Jorge Arce and his team having breakfast beside me. It was pretty. I was too scared to say anything, of course, but that was the night, the morning after he beat Vasquez. But I do remember that now, Mike. I just had to look on BoxRec there because I couldn't remember it, but I do remember that he got him out of there in the 12th round. And it was pretty even, I think. It would have been a draw at that stage, I think. But some great memories there.
But he had surged late, like he was down after 6-7 rounds, and then the belief started kicking in, I think. The experience and the belief. But like I said, it's just incredible the journey that fighters go on, because that was in a sense Jorge Arce's Michael CARBAJAL moment against Jorge Arce.
Yeah. Yeah, and obviously be upset. And Tassie, after this fight, he lost to, he'd actually been beaten by our guy. Who did you say? It was Victor Chinian. And then Nonito Donaire pretty much finished him. But he came back again after that and finally was finished by Johnny Gonzalez in 2014. But what a great career by him, though. He finished with 64-8-2 record with 49 KOs. Just an unbelievable fighter.
Amazing fighter, mate. And a real celebrity in Mexico. He was on, I think, the Mexican version of Big Brother. And he became,
was he?
Yeah, he won
famous there. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. And as I said, CARBAJAL, that was his last fight. But what a career by him too, Mike. Again, he's had too many massive fights to sort of go over there, apart obviously from the Gonzalez fights. But just a true legend of that era.
Look, both you guys grew up with the dream. The boxing dream, whatever it may have been. You know, Tassie, of course, Australian rep, unbeaten professional, and then you're an Olympian. What kind of dream is that for a fighter to go out as world champion? I can't think of a more special moment than for an athlete to know that they left something in the ring. To go out as world champion on top of the world on your terms, to me, that's as special as it gets.
Oh, exactly, mate. And I must admit, I remember seeing CARBAJAL at the '88 Olympics, and I was a big fan of his at the time, and he was an inspiration to me, because that was probably the time I remember where I decided that's what I wanted. I was going for the '96, which is 2 Olympics after this, obviously, and I was fortunate enough to make it. But I still remember him, and obviously Roy Jones Jr. and Riddick Bowe and all the Americans there. It was
Kennedy McKinney.
Ray Mercer, Anthony Hembrick, I think they were all there. Yeah, Kennedy McKinney. Yeah, it was a great Olympics for the States. But anyway, that was.
Where's Peter?
Sorry, mate.
Where's Peter?
I don't think he'd know that, would he?
He don't know shit.
Anyway, that's another segment. But Mike, hey mate, I really appreciate you bringing this fight up, because I think I saw it years and years ago, but to actually sit down and watch it, I had no choice but to watch the whole thing, by the way, because there was no highlights on YouTube, so I actually had to download the whole fight and edit it myself, so I had no choice but to watch it from start to end, and thought it was an unbelievable fight and really good choice. So I'm not sure who we got next week. It might be up back to you, Tassie. I'm not sure whether you got anyone now, but we'll...
I do.
You do? Okay, let's hear it.
It's a shootout. It's Prince Azim Hamed's debut in New York against Kevin Kelly.
Ah, yes. Great fight.
Yeah, good choice.
Awesome choice. Yep, awesome choice. Look forward to that one. All right, well, that's it for this one. That was Micah CARBAJAL, Jorge Arce, and I really implore you, if you're out there, if you're not familiar with these guys, YouTube both of them. They're both legends of the sport, great warriors of boxing, and you won't be disappointed by checking them out. So until next week, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you then.